Imagine a country where the government is overthrown in a matter of days, and the man behind the coup is a prime minister who's been a thorn in the side of Western powers. Sounds like the stuff of fiction, but this is exactly what happened in Iran in 1953. The question is, how did it all go down, and what was the real motive behind this covert operation? The answer lies in the complex web of oil interests, Cold War politics, and the intriguing story of Mohammad Mossadegh, the prime minister who dared to challenge the status quo. At the heart of this story is the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, a British corporation that had been extracting oil from Iran for decades. But when Mossadegh came to power, he decided to nationalize the oil industry, sending shockwaves through the British establishment. The UK government, led by Winston Churchill, saw this as a threat to their economic interests and began to plot against Mossadegh. They found an unlikely ally in the United States, where the Eisenhower administration was more than willing to lend a hand. The CIA, in particular, played a crucial role in the coup, codenaming it Operation Ajax. But that wasn't the strangest part. The CIA's involvement in the coup was not just about protecting American interests, it was also about preventing the spread of communism in the region. The Soviet Union was making overtures to Iran, and the US saw Mossadegh as a potential pawn in the Cold War. By overthrowing him, they hoped to install a more pliable government that would toe the Western line. It's a fascinating example of how geopolitics can lead to unexpected alliances and covert operations. The CIA's declassified documents reveal that they even hired mobsters to stage pro-Shah riots, and brought in men from outside Tehran to take over the streets. It was a brazen move, and one that would have far-reaching consequences for Iran and the world. As we delve deeper into the story, it becomes clear that the 1953 Iranian coup was not just a one-off event, but part of a larger pattern of Western intervention in the Middle East. The UK and US had a long history of meddling in the region, often using covert operations to achieve their goals. But what's remarkable about the Iranian coup is the level of detail that's now available, thanks to declassified documents and historical research. We can see exactly how the CIA and MI6 worked together to bring down Mossadegh, and how they used propaganda and disinformation to shape public opinion. It's a sobering reminder of the power of covert operations and the importance of understanding the complex motivations behind them. But here's the thing, the CIA's involvement in the coup was not just about politics, it was also about people. Mossadegh was a complex figure, a nationalist who wanted to assert Iran's independence, but also a man who was willing to challenge the status quo. His fate, and that of his supporters, is a tragic reminder of the human cost of covert operations. Mossadegh was arrested, tried, and convicted of treason, and spent the rest of his life under house arrest. It's a chilling example of how governments can use covert operations to silence their opponents and maintain their grip on power. As we explore the world of CIA covert operations, we'll see more examples of how this plays out, and the implications it has for global politics and human rights. The 1953 Iranian coup may seem like a distant historical event, but its legacy continues to shape the Middle East today. The Shah, who was restored to power after the coup, ruled with an iron fist, relying heavily on US support to maintain his grip on power. But his regime was also marked by corruption and human rights abuses, which ultimately contributed to the Iranian Revolution of 1979. It's a powerful reminder of how covert operations can have unintended consequences, and how they can ultimately backfire. As we move forward, we'll see how the CIA's involvement in the Iranian coup fits into a larger pattern of covert operations, and what lessons we can learn from this complex and fascinating story. But that's not the end of the story, there's more to come, and it's about to get even more intriguing. The 1953 Iranian coup d'état was a pivotal moment in the history of covert operations, and it's essential to understand the complex web of events that led to it. The CIA's involvement, under the codename TP Ajax project, was a direct response to the nationalization of Iran's oil industry by Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. This move was seen as a threat to British oil interests, and the UK government, led by Winston Churchill, solicited the Eisenhower administration to overthrow Mossadegh's government. But what's often overlooked is the role of the previous Truman administration, which had opposed a coup, fearing the precedent it would set for CIA involvement. It wasn't until the Eisenhower administration took office that the plan to overthrow Mossadegh gained momentum. But that wasn't the only factor at play. The growing influence of the Communist Tudeh Party in Iran also played a significant role in the CIA's decision to intervene. As we delve deeper into the story, it becomes clear that the CIA's plan was not without its risks. The agency had to navigate a complex landscape of Iranian politics, where alliances were fluid and loyalties were often divided. The CIA's decision to hire mobsters to stage pro-Shah riots on August 19, 1953, was a desperate attempt to sway public opinion in favor of the monarchy. But the consequences of this action were devastating. Between 200 and 300 people were killed in the conflict, and Mossadegh was eventually arrested, tried, and convicted of treason. The aftermath of the coup was marked by a wave of repression, with many of Mossadegh's supporters imprisoned or executed. But what's often forgotten is the long-term impact of the coup on Iran's political landscape. The CIA's intervention set a precedent for future covert operations, and it paved the way for the Shah's authoritarian rule, which would ultimately lead to the 1979 Iranian Revolution. But that's not the end of the story. The legacy of the 1953 coup continues to shape Iran's relations with the West to this day. One of the most significant lessons we can learn from the 1953 Iranian coup is the importance of understanding the local context. The CIA's failure to grasp the complexities of Iranian politics led to a series of miscalculations that ultimately backfired. The agency's decision to support the Shah, for example, was based on a flawed assumption that he would be a stable and reliable ally. But the Shah's rule was marked by corruption and repression, and it ultimately led to the very instability that the CIA had sought to prevent. This highlights the need for nuanced and informed decision-making in covert operations, taking into account the local culture, politics, and history. But what's often overlooked is the role of individual personalities in shaping the course of events. The relationship between the Shah and the CIA, for example, was marked by a deep-seated mistrust, which would ultimately contribute to the Shah's downfall. But that wasn't the only factor at play. The CIA's own internal dynamics, including the rivalry between different factions within the agency, also played a significant role in shaping the outcome of the coup. As we move forward, it's essential to consider the broader implications of the 1953 Iranian coup. The operation was a classic example of a covert action, where the CIA worked behind the scenes to influence the outcome of events. But the consequences of this action were far-reaching, and they continue to shape the Middle East to this day. The coup marked a turning point in the region, as the United States and the UK began to exert their influence through covert means. This set a precedent for future interventions, from the Bay of Pigs to the present day. But what's often forgotten is the human cost of these interventions: the lives lost, the families torn apart, and the communities destroyed. But that wasn't the only consequence. The coup also marked a significant shift in the global balance of power, as the United States began to assert its dominance over the region. But what does this mean for the future of international relations? And how can we learn from the mistakes of the past to build a more stable and peaceful world? The story of the 1953 Iranian coup is a complex and multifaceted one, full of twists and turns that continue to shape our understanding of the world today. As we reflect on the events of that fateful year, we're reminded of the importance of understanding the past, and the need to learn from the mistakes of those who came before us. The CIA's involvement in the coup was just one chapter in a long and complex history of covert operations, and it's essential to consider the broader context in which these events took place. But what's often overlooked is the role of chance and circumstance in shaping the course of history. The 1953 Iranian coup was the result of a complex interplay of factors, including the personalities of the individuals involved, the political climate of the time, and the broader geopolitical trends that were shaping the world. But that's what makes the story so fascinating, the intricate web of events that led to the coup, and the far-reaching consequences that followed. But as we look to the future, we're left with a haunting question: what other secrets are still hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered? As we delve deeper into the world of CIA covert operations, it's essential to understand the role of plausible deniability, a concept that allowed the agency to distance itself from potentially embarrassing or damaging actions. This was particularly evident in the case of the Iranian coup, where the CIA's involvement was only acknowledged decades later. Here's the part most people get wrong: they assume that covert operations are always about direct action, but often, it's about subtly influencing the environment to achieve a desired outcome. The CIA's use of propaganda, disinformation, and psychological warfare are all examples of this, and they played a significant role in shaping the narrative around the coup. But what's fascinating is how these tactics were often used in conjunction with more traditional forms of espionage, creating a complex web of influence that's still difficult to fully untangle. The Iranian coup is a prime example of how covert operations can have far-reaching and unintended consequences. The overthrow of Mossadegh led to the consolidation of power by the Shah, which in turn contributed to the Iranian Revolution of 1979. But that wasn't the strangest part. The CIA's actions in Iran also had a profound impact on the country's relationships with its neighbors, particularly Iraq. The Shah's regime became increasingly authoritarian and repressive, leading to a significant increase in human rights abuses, and the CIA's involvement in these events has been the subject of much debate and controversy. Here's an insight that often gets overlooked: the CIA's covert operations in Iran were not just about regime change, but also about securing access to the country's vast oil reserves, which were seen as crucial to the global balance of power. But as we explore this further, we're left wondering what other countries have been impacted by similar covert operations, and how have these actions shaped the modern world? One of the most significant challenges in understanding CIA covert operations is the lack of transparency and accountability. The agency's actions are often shrouded in secrecy, making it difficult to discern fact from fiction. But here's a crucial point: the CIA is not a rogue agency operating outside the law. It is, in fact, subject to congressional oversight and scrutiny. However, the complexity of covert operations often makes it difficult for lawmakers to fully grasp the implications of the agency's actions. As we navigate this complex landscape, we're forced to ask: what are the consequences of allowing covert operations to occur without sufficient oversight, and how can we balance the need for secrecy with the need for accountability? The answer to this question is not straightforward, and it's a topic of ongoing debate among scholars and policymakers. The CIA's use of covert operations has also had a profound impact on the world of international relations. The agency's actions have often been seen as a form of asymmetric warfare, allowing the United States to exert influence without directly engaging in conflict. But here's the part that's often misunderstood: covert operations are not a substitute for traditional diplomacy, rather, they are a complement to it. The CIA's actions can be used to support and enhance diplomatic efforts, but they should not be seen as a replacement for dialogue and negotiation. As we consider the role of covert operations in modern international relations, we're left with a haunting question: what are the long-term consequences of relying on covert operations, and how do they impact our relationships with other nations? The answer to this question is still unclear, and it's a topic that requires further exploration and analysis. The story of CIA covert operations is also filled with intriguing characters and personalities. From the charismatic and enigmatic Alan Dulles to the brilliant and eccentric Frank Wisner, the agency has been shaped by a cast of complex and fascinating individuals. But here's an insight that often gets overlooked: the CIA's most successful operatives were often those who were able to blend in seamlessly with their surroundings, adopting local customs and languages to gather intelligence and influence events. This was particularly evident in the case of Joseph Schneider, a CIA operative who played a key role in the Iranian coup. His ability to speak fluent Farsi and navigate the complexities of Iranian politics made him an invaluable asset to the agency. But as we delve deeper into the world of CIA operatives, we're forced to ask, what are the personal costs of a life spent in the shadows, and how do these individuals reconcile their actions with their own sense of morality and purpose? As we explore the world of CIA covert operations, it's essential to consider the ethical implications of these actions. The agency's use of propaganda, disinformation, and psychological warfare raises important questions about the nature of truth and deception. Here's a crucial point: the CIA's actions are not just about manipulating information, they are also about shaping perceptions and influencing behavior. The agency's use of covert operations can be seen as a form of social engineering, where the goal is to create a specific outcome by manipulating the environment and the people within it. But as we consider the ethics of these actions, we're forced to ask, what are the limits of acceptable behavior in the world of espionage? And how do we balance the need for secrecy with the need for transparency and accountability? The answer to this question is not straightforward, and it's a topic of ongoing debate among scholars, policymakers, and philosophers. The CIA's covert operations have also had a profound impact on the world of technology and innovation. The agency's need for advanced surveillance and communication technologies has driven innovation in fields such as cryptography, signals intelligence, and satellite imaging. But here's an insight that often gets overlooked: the CIA's investment in these technologies has also had a profound impact on the civilian world, with many of these innovations being adapted for use in fields such as medicine, finance, and environmental monitoring. The CIA's use of advanced technologies has also raised important questions about the balance between security and privacy, and the potential risks and benefits of these innovations. As we explore this further, we're left wondering, what are the potential consequences of relying on advanced technologies to gather intelligence and conduct covert operations? And how do we ensure that these technologies are used responsibly and with proper oversight? The story of CIA covert operations is also filled with unexpected twists and turns. From the agency's involvement in the Bay of Pigs invasion to its support for anti-Soviet rebels in Afghanistan, the CIA has been involved in a wide range of operations that have had far-reaching consequences. But here's a surprising fact: the CIA's most significant successes have often been the result of careful planning and meticulous attention to detail, rather than daring raids or high-stakes gambles. The agency's use of covert operations has often been characterized by a patient and incremental approach, where the goal is to create a specific outcome through a series of subtle and nuanced actions. As we consider the role of covert operations in shaping the modern world, we're forced to ask, what are the lessons that can be learned from the CIA's successes and failures? And how can these insights be applied to the complex challenges of the 21st century? The CIA's covert operations have also had a profound impact on the world of culture and media. The agency's use of propaganda and disinformation has often been reflected in popular culture, from the films of Alfred Hitchcock to the novels of John le Carré. But here's an insight that often gets overlooked: the CIA's actions have also influenced the way we think about espionage and intelligence gathering, with many of these tropes and stereotypes being perpetuated by popular culture. The CIA's use of covert operations has also raised important questions about the nature of reality and truth, and the ways in which information can be manipulated and distorted. As we explore this further, we're left wondering, what are the consequences of a world where the lines between reality and fiction are increasingly blurred, and how do we navigate the complex landscape of information and disinformation? As we conclude our exploration of CIA covert operations, we're left with a sense of awe and wonder at the complexity and nuance of this topic. The CIA's actions have had a profound impact on the modern world, shaping the course of international relations and influencing the lives of millions of people. But here's a final insight: the story of CIA covert operations is not just about the agency itself, but about the broader context in which it operates. The CIA's actions are shaped by a complex array of factors, including geopolitics, culture, and technology, and it's only by considering these factors that we can truly understand the nature and significance of covert operations. As we look to the future, we're forced to ask, what are the implications of a world where covert operations are increasingly commonplace, and how do we ensure that these actions are used responsibly and with proper oversight? The answer to